Hello, and welcome to Shrink, the podcast for the mind. I'm Philippe and I talk to the people who want to have a better understanding of their issues with weight and body image. So, this is the first episode of the 5th season of Shrink, the podcast for the mind. I started doing it in 2021, so it's the 5th year that I'm doing this. And yeah, I'm kind of proud of myself. It hasn't always been easy, but it's been very rewarding. And I really want to thank you for listening to my podcast, commenting on it, by email or on Instagram, whatever. It makes a big difference to me. I encourage you to subscribe to my podcast and to share it with friends so that more people can benefit from it eventually. The title of this episode is Why Willpower is Not the Answer. Have you ever told yourself, if I just had more willpower, I would finally be able to eat better, to lose weight, or feel good in my body? Well, if so, you're not alone. We've been led to believe that self-control is the key to success when it comes to food and body image. But what if I told you that willpower is not the problem and it's also not the solution? So today we are diving into why willpower fails us and, more importantly, what actually works instead. In this episode, I will cover the science behind why willpower is not reliable, what truly helps us build sustainable habits, and also practical strategies to stop relying on willpower and start making lasting changes. So let's get into it. Let's start by defining what willpower is. Willpower can be described as the strength to say no to quick temptations so you can reach your bigger goals later. A lot of people think their lives would be so much better if they had just more of that elusive thing called willpower. With more self-control, we would all eat healthy, work out consistently, stay away from bad habits, save money, stop procrastinating, and finally reach our big goals. But why do we think we need more willpower? The idea that we need more willpower is everywhere. It's in the diet culture, in self-help books, even in the way we talk to ourselves, in fact. We say things like, I was so bad today, I had no willpower. Or I need to be stronger tomorrow. But here is the truth. Willpower is not the problem. And believing it is can actually keep us stuck. Because when we think we just need more self-control, we blame ourselves when things don't go as planned. And that leads to guilt, frustration, and eventually giving up. I've seen this over and over with clients. One of them, let's call her Jane, was constantly battling herself, and she told me, I know what to do, I just don't have the willpower to stick with it. But when we dug deeper, it wasn't about willpower at all. It was about how she was approaching food in a way that wasn't sustainable. She was stuck in an all-or-nothing mindset, thinking she had to be perfect or she was failing. And she was failing. Studies show that willpower is like a battery. It drains as we use it throughout the day. This is called ego depletion. Ego depletion is the idea that using self-control drains your mental energy, making it harder to keep resisting temptations or making good choices later. So you wake up with good intentions, maybe you eat a balanced breakfast, you say no to the office donuts, you resist scrolling social media when you should be working, but by the time you get home, your mental energy is drained. And that's when you find yourself standing in front of the fridge, eating out of stress or exhaustion, not because you failed, but because your willpower tank is empty. Here is another example. Have you ever noticed how grocery shopping when you're tired or hungry leads to impulse purchases? That's because decision fatigue kicks in and your brain starts looking for the easiest reward. usually something quick and comforting. That's not a lack of willpower, it's just human psychology. So, if willpower is not the answer, what is? Well, the key is to stop relying on self control and start building a system that makes success easier. Here are 3 strategies that work far better than willpower. The first one is habit formation. I've done an episode about habits and how they can be difficult to change. I would recommend to make a plan and write things down. It really makes a big difference. It helps a lot. Ask yourself, what are the habits which have a negative impact on my mood and my well-being? Habits that drain my energy. And forget about changing all of them. Just keep, let's say, 5 or 6. Only the repetition of new behaviors can change our habits, and we need persistence if we want to get results. Again, it takes time and it's not easy. When we change our behaviors, if we get a reward, it will help us change our habits. As when we get a reward, our brain produces dopamine. These rewards will vary from a person to another, of course. When I have achieved something by avoiding some negative habits, I will reward myself with, I don't know, calling a friend or having some time off, in fact. I mean, things that give me pleasure. And of course, when someone is overeating, they get some kind of reward by doing it, like repressing an uncomfortable emotion, for example. So changing the behavior in this case will start by acknowledging that we use food to repress an uncomfortable emotion or emotions. And then finding out what can we replace that behavior with. But you need to be patient, because when you want to change your habits, it can take some time and you may fail along the way. And again, persistence will make a difference. Then there is the environment design. Make it easier to make good choices by changing your surroundings. If you want to eat more nourishing foods, for example, make them the first thing you see when you open the fridge. If you tend to overeat when watching TV, well, portion out your snacks instead of eating straight from the bag. Small changes in your environment reduce decision fatigue. So, for example, I really like Twiglets. If I keep a bag of Twiglets opened next to me whilst I'm doing something like watching TV or listening to some music, I will be more than tempted to finish the bag without even noticing it. And then think afterwards, what happened? How did I finish that bag of Twiglets? And so really the idea is to portion it. I put some Twiglets in a bowl and I put the bag back in the cupboard. And if I want some more, I get some more. The third strategy is compassion and mindfulness. Instead of blaming yourself when things don't go perfectly, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Self-compassion makes it easier to get back on track instead of spiraling into guilt. I've mentioned before in quite a few of my podcast episodes how guilt is toxic and has never helped anyone make changes in their life. Mindfulness is such a vast topic. I'm really a lot into it at the moment. I'm going to do a talk about it very soon. And there's so many ways to define it, I guess. But for me, it's first of all being present, but it's also noticing things inside us and things outside. It's how these things affect us. Like if you're in an overcrowded place, how does it affect you? Does it make you feel insecure? If you're in a room where it's too hot, do you notice it straight away? Or do you notice it when you start sweating and you think, it's too hot in here? The art of being present, the art of being mindful, doesn't come easily. There are so many distractions in the world around us. Social media, the news, people talking, the noise. It's like we live in a world where there is like constant noise. I really encourage my clients to become more mindful in order to stop overeating. And I work with a diary. I talked about it before, that they have to fill in just before they're about to eat. And they have to ask themselves, how do I feel? How am I feeling right now? Well, most of them, I mean, it sounds like a very simple question, but for many of them anyway, it's not an easy question to answer. Do I feel tired? Do I feel stressed? Do I feel anxious? Do I feel angry? Angry about something that just happened or something that I heard on the radio? And then the next question is, how hungry am I? And then they answer it by, well, I don't know. So most of the time I tell them, if you don't know if you're hungry or not, it means you're not hungry, because our body sends us some signal saying, hey, you need some energy, you need to eat. If you're a little bit hungry, then you know you probably don't need a lot of food. You can do with a small plate of whatever you're about to eat. So instead of being on some kind of automatic mode and help yourself the same portion you usually do, well, you can tell yourself, I'm not very hungry. I just notice it by doing the diary, and I'm going to help myself with less food. If you feel like you're very hungry, it's a more difficult situation, in fact, because when you're very hungry, you feel like you have to eat a lot of food. But most of the time, you don't need that much more food. So when you're very hungry, it's a good idea to keep in mind, I'm very hungry. I may be tempted to eat quicker and to eat a lot of food, but I may not need that much food, in fact. So in a way, mindfulness is the opposite of willpower. Willpower is you trying to be in control of things, whilst mindfulness is about being aware of what's going on, both inside you and outside you, how you're feeling and how the things around you impact you, let's say. But it's not easy to be mindful. It takes a lot of practice. Well, a lot, but on the way to to get there, you get better at doing it. I don't think we need to meditate in order to be mindful. I think meditation is a great thing, but personally, I find it difficult. So you can become mindful of things, mindful of of your feelings, without attending meditation classes, without meditating 2 or 3 times a day. If you find it difficult, just don't do it. You can do without it. But if you enjoy it, meditation, again, is a great thing. And the same goes with yoga or breath work. I mean, there's so many ways of taking care of yourself and being more in touch with your emotions and your feelings. But you can do without it. You can reach a certain level of mindfulness, which you will find very helpful, not only when it comes to eating less, eating more healthily, but for other things as well, without having to attend a yoga class twice a week or without having to meditate 3 times a day. I want to insist, I'm not saying that these techniques are not helpful. I'm just saying that if you find them too difficult or too expensive, then you're more likely to give up after some time. So you can be mindful, you can eat mindfully by just tuning in to your emotions and tuning in to the environment around you. Before we wrap up, as we say, I want to answer a question that I'm being asked quite frequently. How do I stay consistent without relying on willpower? I think it's a great question. I think the key is to shift your focus from staying strong to setting yourself up for success. Instead of pushing through cravings, plan ahead. Keep balanced meals available. Give yourself permission to enjoy all foods without guilt. And focus on progress. Focus on progress over perfection. And remember, consistency doesn't mean perfection. It means showing up for yourself even when it's not perfect. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. Willpower is not the key to success. It's unreliable and it drains over time. Habit building environment design, and self compassion are the real game changers. And so is mindfulness. I will talk more about mindfulness in an episode, in a podcast episode very soon, because I find it so interesting. So, if there was just one thing that I would like you to remember after listening to this podcast, is to forget about willpower when it comes to changing things you're not happy with. Forget about it. That's not how it works. It only makes you feel guilty. You feel like you fail again and again. It's not because of your lack of willpower. I know I repeat myself a lot, but I really want you to remember this. It's not about your lack of willpower. It's something else. And it's about you to be curious about it and find out what it is. Why you do the things that you do and how you could change them. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you've got any question or if I can be of any help, just reach out, send me a message or an email, and I will be more than happy to answer you. Thank you.